So she's 15 years old. This is a tape we did in Las Vegas. Anyone ever been to Las Vegas? Okay. Interesting place for adults, a little like adult Disneyland. Except a lot of money involved. Well, Disneyland has a lot of money involved, and so maybe it's exactly the same. Anyway, 15, this girl is drop dead gorgeous. She's beautiful. And at 15, she's been referred to us for trouble with school. But the bigger trouble that she has is she is beautiful and she's a target in Las Vegas. You know the fancy clubs in all those casinos that if you or I wanted to get in, we'd never get in? Guess who gets in at 15 and never pays a penny? And guess who's solicited to get in? Her. She can go anywhere she wants. She's at real risk of entering a world that's not good. Her grandmother is right here. Why her grandmother? Because when she was 6, her mother had serious drug problems. We're not talking cannabis, we're talking heroin. And she was out on the street, she couldn't take care of her children, and there's more than one. This little girl, Brianna, has 2 younger siblings. The grandmother adopted them officially. So the grandmother, who is almost 70, who was a teacher for 40 years, who lost her husband, and she is so cute. This is a true story. You know, what the grandmother said is, you know what I had planned in life? I had planned to be the sex symbol of the geriatric set. What she had planned was this. Seriously. I mean, she had a great plan. I mean, what's the matter with that? That's kind of a cool plan. She planned 3 or 4 times a year to go on a cruise, find some great man, have a wonderful time, and then when it docked, leave him behind and go home till the next cruise. Good for her. Good for her. On the other hand, suddenly she had to adopt 3 children. Kind of ruined that plan. Not so easy to be the sex symbol of the geriatric set when you got 3 small children. So it has ruined her plan. Now, what happened to them is that when they were first together, the grandmother and the daughter kind of saved each other. And then there were 2 other children, and they kind of lost something, right? They lost this special connection. This, of course, is a trainee, not that I came in on, but was there from the beginning, and you can see me. And we went through engagement and motivation, and we had a theme, and the theme was loss, kind of more complicated than that there was loss. We decided that one of the things that would be helpful would be a problem-solving skill. Except we knew a couple things about them. One, we knew that the grandmother can never let anything go. Little like the mother we saw earlier before the break. Can't let anything go. What that means is she is so persistent, she sticks on everything. So we knew that before we started problem solving. We knew we had to manage that. We also knew that the relational functions between them were a bit different. For the grandmother, the relational function we would have said was a 4, meaning high interdependence, meaning that for her, the problem solving needed to be very much take a lot of time, be very emotional, etc., etc., etc. We also know that for the granddaughter, her relational function was more of a 2, more independent. Now remember when I talked about relational functions, we're not trying to change them and make them the same. We want to match to them as we do problem solving. So we knew the skill, we knew how to match it, so I go in for a session of problem solving.
Up to the gas station to get your tires pumped, and you're in the middle of it, and she had to go out of the car and ask the man to get her tires spilled.
So what I asked is I had given them I made a mistake. I make a lot of mistakes, but the mistake I made is I asked them, I got a little excited in the session before and I gave them a homework assignment. And they didn't do it. My fault, not theirs. So I have to make something of it. So she's explaining that I'm saying, how did it go? And she said, well, we went to the gas station and we tried to talk about it, et cetera, et cetera.
Can I just ask whether or not her explaining that's going to keep us on point or get us off point?
The grandmother actually said, well, tell him why we didn't do it. Blaming, right? And the girl said, we went to the gas station, and then I intervened. And I intervened with the theme that had been in the sessions earlier. And it was a theme of getting on point, losing track by going into the past. That's what they do. So I'm asking here, I'm intervening and saying, will that keep us on the discussion? Or our saying, the American saying, does that keep us on point or off point?
Because it's not true, I suppose it's gonna get us off point, or does that keep us on point?
Well, I
She
guess
said she didn't want to talk about it.
And the grandmother says, well, I don't know. She lied. So is that on point or off point? The grandmother really wants to go into being negative and blaming. And I'm going to try to keep her from that.
This is, I don't see why you don't do this, I don't talk about it. Honey, you do say these things, you don't?
But I didn't.
okay, do you see where we're going right now?
Yeah.
And see, they even begin to fight a little bit. You can see it, even without knowing what they're talking about. See, quickly they fall into the same pattern of, yes, you did, no, you didn't, yes, you did, no, you didn't. And I have to intervene with that and stop that so we're able to move ahead.
But, yeah, I
And
understand that.
you have a separate concern, it sounds. You have a separate concern that one of the things that gets in the way, let's check this, but it sounds like that as you talk about things, is that it bothers you that the reporting of it isn't accurate as you see it.
So what I say basically is I intervene to say to the grandmother, oh, I see, you have a different worry. Your worry is that she is not reporting it accurately. And then the grandmother says, yeah, I'd talk forever. Well, that's not what the girl would do.
Do that, yeah, we do that all the time.
I think that when you negotiate, it's got to be really short.
And I jump in and said, if you're going to negotiate and problem solve, it needs to be short. Whoever said that was part of problem solving, keeping it short? It isn't, but it is for them. I added a new step to problem solving. I said, if you're going to do it, you better do it short. Why? Because that's specific to them. I'm tailoring it to them.
We carry it on.
It's got to be short.
And the girl says, yeah, we carry it on too far.
Because the longer it goes, the more likelihood it is to get off track. And I understand why to go on, because you're getting a chance to talk to her.
And I say, the longer you go on, the more you'll get off track. And I understand, Grandma, why? Because you get to talk to her.
And I understand why you don't want to go on. Because you want to get it done and move on. And I understand that's sort of the two motives here.
And I understand, I say to the girl, I understand why you want to move on. And you have two different motives here, two different motivations.
But that's really hard. But if to be successful with the negotiation, it has to be on point, it has to be short.
And I say, to be successful, let me tell you, it has to be short, it has to be on point, meaning specific.
And what you did, Doris, which is you added alternatives. That's perfect.
And I say to the grandmother, well, guess what? You did a good job. You added some alternatives to the worry.
That's perfect. When you come up to it, let's generate alternatives. And it sounds like you added the alternative that will let this work, which is the negotiation around lock it until Anthony goes to bed and then unlock it. Or
See, what I did is before the tape started, I said to them there are 5 steps of problem solving. What's the problem? You've got to identify some alternatives, etc. Very clear, laying out the steps. Now they start into something, and now I have to guide them along the way so that they're successful. They started a little bit, and I'm trying to reinforce their success in doing it.
around, I forget which way you said.
Yeah, after he goes to bed, can't get in there.
Very nicely done.
And what they're talking about is they're talking about the girl's ability to go to a room. They have a recreation room kind of outside that she likes to go to. The problem is the grandmother doesn't like her to be out there a lot, and there's a good reason, because she is out there with her boyfriend and they do things that she probably shouldn't be doing. And so there's reason to monitor her. The question is just how to monitor her.
Acceptable to the two of you?
Mm-hmm.
So they were successful in coming up with a way, and the idea was she can be out there until her younger brother goes to bed, and then she's got to lock it, and she's got to come in, right? Pretty simple, and they did a good job. That was not hard. So all I did was walk them through the steps of problem solving.
Tis to me.
What about the time coming in?
Now they had a second one, which is what time does she need to come in? So notice, all we're going to do is go around it again with a different aspect. So first I broke it down into pieces. What are you going to do with the door? Now, secondly, we were going to come back to when and how. I mean, when is it that you'll come in?
Because that's your second worry. And if we're going to negotiate, then a nice thing is let's add your concern to it, which is you want to get it locked up to be safe.
And I say to her, that was your concern, grandmother, is to make sure that you get it locked at a reasonably good time when she can come in.
And is that okay with you to have some time to come back in?
And I say to the girl, is it okay to have a time to come back in?
That's what my idea.
I didn't say anything about that. That's the first time I've heard it. Oh, well, what time do you want to come back then?
Grandmother says, well, what time would you like? They're doing exactly what I asked, right? They're doing problem solving. Staying on point, not getting off.
About 5. What time are you willing?
On the weekdays, I don't think weekends should have a limit because I think I should be able to stay out there, but that's another thing.
The girl says, on weekdays, I'll come up with a time. And then she throws in this, but on the weekend, I don't think I should have to come in. Well, we're not going to go there yet. We're going to let that one be for later. Let's try to be successful rather than going to something it's not.
On the weekends or weekdays, I think I should. My friends have to leave like at 9:30, so I think I should be able to stay out there until like 10:30.
So the girl says, hey, my friends go home at 9:30, so
Good, and you did a wonderful job of doing exactly what I just asked you to do, which is you just answered the question. Thank you. And I understand how hard that is.
and what I say to her is the girl says 9:30 and the grandma says that's fine. And I say, good job. You didn't get off track. You did a nice job and it's solved and done. So I introduced the skill. They practiced it. They did it with one small thing about locking the door. Then they did it with a second thing about a time to come in. Then comes the big one, which is the weekend. And you already heard the girl say, I don't think I should have a time. So they've been successful at two things.
Not that it's that hard, but it is.
And I say to the grandmother, good for you for staying on track.
So we have an agreement then, the two of you have an agreement about the door lock that's also,
So I say, you two have an agreement about locking the door,
that's also a problem, and about a time thing.
and you've been successful about coming up with a time.
This is what I understand. I'm here at 10:30 on a weekday, and I have to have the door unlocked when he goes to bed.
And the girl does a beautiful job of the last step of problem solving. She summarizes, just like I asked her. She says, okay, let me see if this is what I heard. And then she repeats the suggestion. On the weekdays at 10:30, I have to lock the door at a certain time. Perfect, she did it exactly. So what is our job? Our job is just focusing on them doing it, so now I just will reinforce them.
Should I ask her if that's right?
And I just say, well, ask your grandma if that's correct.
Right? That's fine.
And the grandma says, fine. Two things solved. Pretty easy.
This is exactly how you keep it short. You know what you just did, Brianna? You just added the part of this negotiation that I forgot to tell you about.
And what I say to her is just, Brianna, you did a great job because you added something I forgot to tell you. You added the part of checking with the other person to make sure they understood so that you have a contract between you.
which is before you're done, always check and make sure that you're clear about what it is.
Good for
What
you.
are we gonna do about weekends?
And then the grandmother goes on to the next one. What are we going to do about the weekends? Well, that's a little more hard.
What is
Be real clear about what your question is.
the
Okay,
And again, you can tell the girl goes, because she already told us, I don't want to come in on the weekends. I don't want to have a time. So I try to, with the grandmother, build in a communication skill that adapts to the family. I say, be very clear what you're asking. Remember, she said, what are we going to do about the weekends? I want her to be more specific. So I want to have in problem solving for her to use good, concrete, specific communication skills. So I say, now wait a minute, be specific. Say what you want to say.
well, reason for what, I don't want you to stay out there all night on weekends.
And the grandmother says, she goes into an explanation, I don't want you to stay out there all night.
I don't want you to stay out there all night.
Can I make a suggestion?
And I interrupt her. She's about to go off on the past and get off point.
How about saying, what time could we negotiate on the weekend?
And I just give her the words to say.
What time could be negotiated on weekends?
What time can we negotiate on the weekend?
I want to negotiate time.
I know you don't want to, but she wants to have it, she wants to have it.
Up to to the gas station to get your tires pumped, and you're in the middle of it, and she had to go out
Sorry, just give me 1 second.
of the car and ask the man to get her tires filled.
What in the world? You know, I really appreciate the independence of my computer sometimes, but right now I'm not appreciating it. You know, after yesterday and today, I'm beginning to think that it has nothing to do with the computers, but there would be user error somehow in this. Where? Oh, there it is. I know you can see it. Thank you.
Is let's add your concern to it, which is you want, but it is. So thanks for doing it. So we have an agreement then, the two of you have an agreement about the door, which is before you're done, always check and make sure that you're clear about what it is. Agreed? I don't need to tell you about this.
Now, what are we gonna do about weekends?
The grandmother again, what are we going to do about the weekend?
Be real clear about what you're
Trying to make her clear.
Well, reason for what, I don't want you to stay out there all night on weekends. I don't want you to stay out there all night.
Can I make a suggestion? Can I suggest? How about saying, what time could we negotiate on weekends?
Okay.
So I say, what time can we negotiate?
I want to negotiate time.
The girl says, I don't want to negotiate a time. And I just messed it up again. Jeez, I'm not so good at this.
This is it. She wants to have it at 10:30 on the weekend.
And I'm just going to encourage her and say, the grandmother wants it way earlier than you, so join in on this negotiation.
What made it work for you is that there were some choices to make, and you kind of went back and forth. Okay? And just because.
So I say to the girl, what made it work before is there were choices to follow. So don't give up, keep with it, I'm saying.
Offer something doesn't mean it'll be the thing you decide.
So I'm just working her through problem solving. I'm saying offer an alternative. Give another option here. If you want to work this through, give another choice.
Is it going off track if I ask her why I couldn't swim it out there?
And then this young lady is so terrific. She says to me, would it be going off track if I asked my grandmother why I can't? Brilliant. And I have a great answer to that. Listen to my terrific answer.
I think if you, I think you can ask, yeah. And then you'll have to check.
That's pretty international. She surprised me so much. She surprised me so much because it was a brilliant thing to say. She was right with the theme with me. She was right on target with me. She's kept with the theme and said, can I ask her? And it was like, well, okay. And so she's going to ask her grandmother, which is terrific.
Try to see if it gets off track.
And then I put it on her. You try and see if it gets off track. Let's just try and see.
Put yourself back into that. Cool.
Oh, why can't I stop it? What's wrong with that?
And she says, well, how come I can't stay out there? Is there something the matter with that?
Staying up there, without a heater on, is not good for your health wise, because it really gets cold.
Staying out there is not good for you. It's not good for your health. None of this makes any difference to the girl, by the way. Hey, by the way, it's the desert.
If you stay out there all night, you're going to have heat on. Just like last time I came home.
If you're going to stay out there all night, you've got to have the heater.
The heater is lasting. We can't afford to pay the electric bill.
And we can't afford the electric bill. Jeez. And I can't afford to keep doing this.
I don't understand time.
I think if you,
Without a heater on is not good for your health wise, because it really gets cold. If you stay out there all night, you're going to have heat on.
If you stay out there all night, we have to have a heater.
The heater is lasting. We can't afford to pay the electric bill. It's going to end up like the bill in the summertime with the air conditioner. It runs over $200.
I understand.
And then the grandmother says, we can't afford it. Like in the summer, it'd be $200. It'd be too expensive, etc. And the girl says, oh, I get it, no problem. And I say to the grandmother, be specific. Don't get off tack.
So there's your answer. And you probably have a different opinion about that, or you probably could right now say some things.
And I say to the girl, hey, you got your answer. Now, you might not like it, but you got it. So you have a choice here. What are you going to do? Are you going to stay negotiating, or are you going to back out?
But
And
that would get us off point.
And then I say, if you were to back out, that would get us off point, keeping the theme going.
yeah, so I'm trying to think of something, because
And she says, I'm just trying to think of something to say because I'm not a very good operator of this.
oh, why can't I stop?
Afford to pay the electric bill.
They have a different opinion about that, or you probably could right now say some things about that. But
And
that would get us off point.
yeah, so I'm trying to think of something, because I want to be able to stay the night out there. And
So she says, I'm trying to think of something because I really want to stay out there all night, and I'm trying to figure out what I could offer as an alternative that would help, that would let me be able to do that.
Are you talking about staying the night all the time?
no, not all the time, just sometimes.
And so I help. I say, all the time or just a few times? She goes, just a few times. So I'm helping them get through this. I'm almost playing a coach. I've identified the skill, and I'm trying to overcome the barriers that get in their way to make sure that they're successful.
You know what you're trying to make a suggestion to? You know, you're really talking about something different. You're not talking about a ton of the weekend. What you're saying is that every once in a while on the weekend, you'd like to be able to say,
I got something good.
And the girl comes up with an idea.
I want to be able to spend the night out there. However, I have to ask you, and you should let me some of the time. And
So the girl says, how about if I ask you, and you should let me?
but other than that, I should have to come in and like 2.
And she says, well, then I think maybe I should, let's see, how about 2?
Because that's the time you always tell me to come home at.
Because that's the time you tell me to come home. So that makes sense. It does make kind of some sense. 2's a little late for 15, but that's a different thing.
Come home at just 2. And whenever I had somebody over last week, you said I had to leave at 2. So 2, I think would be acceptable.
So she comes up with an alternative, and the grandmother says, unacceptable. Now what are we going to do? Here's this great problem-solving thing we're doing. They've been successful all these different times, and then we get to an impasse. Now we've got to figure out our way around that impasse, or whatever good success they had will be lost. Now what I want you to notice, and I know that it's difficult with this translation, I understand that, but what I want you to notice is how different I act in this phase. I'm playing coach, teacher, encourager. I'm jumping in the middle of it and saying, wait a minute, stop here, say it, no, wait. Maybe you want to say it this way. Oh, but take a deep breath, maybe say it this way. I get right in the middle of it, and I also have them speak to one another more often. So the task is to get the skill into the middle of them, let them bring the event, make it work in the room. You can see why we don't want to have them go off and do it as homework. It would never work. That's why behavior change in FFT is done in the room, not outside. Because if it was done at home, no one would be there to coach them through it. And we want to coach them through it at the beginning so they get successful. Now what ends up happening is that now suddenly I have to adapt to the situation. I need to take my plan, problem solving, and I have to add something to it. And what I'm going to add to it is I have to add a little bit of conflict management. Right? And I have to do that creatively in the moment. It wasn't what I planned, but now I figured out it's one of the things that happens to them, so I have to add that. So I'm now going to add to it this business of conflict management, and so I say to the grandmother, hey, is it worth it to fight over this? That's what you do with conflict management. Is it worth it? Right? You try to get people to back away from the conflict. Manage it, not let it take over. And you know what the grandmother tells me? Yes. And I think to myself, oh my goodness, now what am I going to do? I did what the book said, and she said no. So what am I going to do now? So what I do is I keep at it. I keep at the conflict, and I keep talking to her, and I say, you know, can we stick with it, you know, etc. And you know what the grandmother does? A brilliant thing happens. The thing that happens is the grandmother finally says, you know what bothers me? I'm happy for her to stay out there till 2. But she just told you that her curfew is 2 o'clock, and it isn't. What the grandmother was not fighting about really wasn't about this negotiation. It was about something the girl said along the way. We clarified that. The girl said, no. I don't think my curfew's 2. I know it's midnight. And the grandmother got calmer. She got more relaxed. And the girl said, and I kept saying, well, let's negotiate this. Let's keep this up. And the grandmother said, okay, I got it. I'll do this. You want to, how about we do, or the girl says, you want to, how about 1 o'clock? Right? That's okay. They're playing a game, right? This is like bartering. That's fine. That's not unlike what you have to do with a teenager, right? That's doing it with alliance. And if you can help a parent realize that they're not being less of a parent to do this, in fact, this is the way to be a powerful parent. This is how you have to have power with an adolescent, is you have to be smart enough to work with them. I've just reframed the parent's desire to have control. And so the girl says, okay, 1 o'clock's great. You know what the grandmother does? She says, well, 12:30 is halfway between 1 and 12. Meaning she keeps it going. And so finally the grandmother says, okay, I'm sorry, okay, 1 o'clock is good, we'll do it. And they're done. Took us an hour to do this. An hour to work this through. An hour. Because what we're interested in behavior change is not fixing things. We're interested in getting them to know what the skill is. We're interested in focus the discussion in the session on the skill. We're interested in adapting it to them by matching it to their functions. We're interested in having them practice. And then situations come up in the room that you don't expect. And we're interested in adapting it to the situation so that it's successful. Now, with this young lady, problem solving around going out in this room is not the biggest problem they have in the world. Not at all. But it's nice because they now have a skill that they know what it is and they've done it. Now, the next week, you know what happens? They come in with a different problem. I fully expect it. Good for them. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to add a new skill. I'm going to go right back to the same one. And now I've learned some things. Keep on point. Make it short. What is the goal? What are the alternatives? Don't get lost along the way. Don't get into a corner you can't get out of. Always check to make sure, all of those things. And you'll see in your slides, I have a slide there where I list for you the steps of problem solving. And notice, I don't do them exactly like those steps because I adapt them to the family, I adapt them to the situation. And I mix problem solving with communication and conflict management. I make a unique mix that fits them. And then the next time I do a new one, and the next time I do a new one. And we move on and on and on. We do about 3 more sessions of this, and guess what? I never change the skill. I keep on the same one. And you might ask yourself, why? Aren't there other skills that would help them? And I say, absolutely. The question is, will they be able to keep them up? Or will it be something they'll forget? I think the latter is they'll forget it. So I want to keep one. And we haven't fixed everything. And what's really, really important is to remember, as an FFT therapist, because I have a map, I know that there's more to come in the final phase. And in the final phase, we're going to take new problem situations, and we're not going to do this anymore, but we're going to get them to do it on their own in the different problem situations so that they're empowered to be able to do it themselves.